do you think AI is hype or help? Do we see that AI is going to replace jobs? I mean, that's one of the biggest fears that the workforce has at the moment is the replacement of jobs. Um, I guess if you're a worker in the US, you're concerned about your job going offshore. Now, we're also concerned about our job not only going offshore, but going to AI.
That a lot of the basic data entry work will probably rightfully lose its way to the newer and newer models as they get more complex and as they can handle those edge cases. We see
Hmm.
this a lot with turning unstructured data into structured data already.
Hmm.
And that has been one of the biggest use cases for AI in an enterprise or a business setting right now. What I really love about ChatGPT, it's technically meant for students, but we use it all the time. It's called study mode. I don't know if you've heard of this.
No, no, that's new to me.
So, yeah, this is fantastic. Where if you have study mode enabled and you ask it a question, it will not give you the answer. It will help you think through how to get to the answer.
Mm.
So, we are all for using ChatGPT, but I am hiring someone for their critical thinking skill.
Those were great examples of how you've nicely blended the human element with the AI element. I'm very interested in, I guess, virtual workers, remote workers, time zone, leveraging that. Is there some kind of AI magic tool that you could reach out and say, that would really help me? Is there something that comes to mind for you?
So, not on the performance management piece, but there is definitely on the efficiency piece.
People, we love connection, we crave connection, we need connection. And how about using AI to help with that? I think that's a really positive idea that comes out of AI. G'day and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Pete Cooper from Skillion. Our topic today is AI, hype or help, and I'm meeting with Nathan Sykes. Now, Nathan owns his own company called The People Company. They offer virtual assistants to small businesses to help clients optimize their time and delegate some of the work off their shoulders. Now, this is a really important topic for AI because I think a lot of people feel that virtual assistants are going to be taken out of the workforce because of AI. Now, Nathan has some opinions about that, and we're going to find out all about it and whether AI is helping or hype. G'day, Nathan, and welcome. So you were telling me that you're a digital nomad, and you also founded the People Company. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that. So tell me, what is the People Company about in brief?
Sure. So the People Company places excellent virtual assistants with small business owners. And I think a lot of people, especially nowadays, get it a little mixed up and they think a virtual assistant has something to do with tech or with AI. And that's not exactly true. Basically, a virtual assistant is a remote professional that happens to live in a country with a lower cost of living, and allows you to hire someone who speaks excellent English, has excellent competency at what they do, just at a lower rate than hiring someone in the US. So we help small businesses here in the United States tap into some of that excellent labor elsewhere. So they're saving on costs, and people from less fortunate countries have ways to get higher levels of employment.
Oh, nice, very nice. And what was your original spark to get that to go into this business? What was motivating you?
Oh, goodness. You know, through high school and college, I put myself through school with a lot of tinkering on the side, right? A lot of, lightweight marketing work, but more specifically, a lot of lightweight development work. I fancied myself a little bit of a software engineer, and
Hmm.
I was building small internal tools for people. And that's how I had some spending money in high school and college, at least the first few years of college. And I started to outsource some of that work out to other people. But, being in college, I couldn't afford to hire Americans. So
Hmm.
I looked at Upwork and I started seeing that there were people in other countries who were just as talented, just as skilled, spoke perfect English. And I started giving them some of that work. And then very quickly realized that there was more opportunity in that than there was in the development work. So, as a sophomore in college, going into my junior year, I founded the People Company, and I've been at it ever since with our team of almost 30 people full time now.
That's great. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, you and I both have used Upwork and Freelancer and those, but I'm also one of your clients as well. So I know why I use Nathan Sykes and the People Company, but how do you explain to somebody else why they would use your company versus one of the competitors?
Small businesses are dragged in a million different directions
Mm,
nowadays. Both small business owners and medium-sized business owners are stuck wearing a million different hats.
mm,
And it means that a lot of their day is not spent working on the business or is spent relaxing with family or whatever they feel that they deserve as a business owner, having taken that risk. Instead, they spend their day doing mindless, needless administrative stuff that
hmm
either they're not good at, it is objectively beneath them as a business owner, or they don't know how to do it, or in some cases they just feel like they don't want to do it, which is a perfectly valid response. And I think
mm,
post COVID, a lot of especially Main Street business owners, which is the target demographic we service at the People Company, realize that you don't need to be in the office to do a lot of that work. Even stuff like mail handling right now could, in theory, be done by a virtual assistant because of virtual mailboxes and stuff. But
mm,
we're very quickly expanding the scope of job responsibilities that can be done by someone who is not sitting at a desk in a brick and mortar location.
yeah,
And with that, it means that not only do they not need to be in the same office, they don't necessarily need to be in the same state or the same country.
mm,
So we have been working with a lot of small business owners who have realized, hey, I'm spending 3 or 4 hours a day checking emails and calling people and paying bills and chasing down invoices and scheduling things on social media and editing these videos. Or, we do a lot of work with insurance agents and with lawyers, and there's a lot of correspondence that has to be drafted. And every minute that a business owner is spent doing that work that could, in theory, be done by someone else means that they're not focusing on the actual needle moving activity that will actually grow the business. So
nice.
we
Mm,
found a great niche in the Main Street business owner who has just come to this realization that a lot of this work doesn't need to be done by someone in the office. And because of that, can be done by someone that's not even in the same country or the same
mm.
time zone.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, you talked a little bit about post-COVID. What I witnessed post-COVID or during COVID even was the shift from people who are using the phone as the
Mm-hmm.
main means of communication to using Zoom and video.
Yeah.
That shift seemed to happen during COVID. I guess there's been a little bit of shift back, but I think there's almost it's stuck now. I think a lot of people have moved over to Zoom and to those kinds of tools. Is that what you've witnessed as well?
Yes. I mean, for the life of me, I still can't figure out why Skype didn't win this war, because they were like
Yeah.
right in the position to, really capitalize. And then Zoom came out of nowhere. And then, a Microsoft Teams, I think, eclipsed even them. So I still, for the life of me, don't know why Skype didn't get the crown there. But yeah, you're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
I wasn't in this line of business when COVID originally hit,
Mm.
but even just anecdotally, I
Hmm.
can see that shift. And a lot of people, you know, our firm does a lot with tradespeople, right? A
Yeah.
lot of roofers, a lot of plumbers, electricians, appliance repair, people that you would not traditionally consider tech savvy. And they would be the first to admit that, right?
Mm.
And
Mm.
they're having to adopt all of this great technology as a result of the COVID pandemic, forcing them to have to collaborate with their team and with their
Mm.
other stakeholders electronically and digitally. So a lot
Mm.
of them, having lived and died from the phone and having used the same phone number for business and personal for 25 years, are now having to go set up on Zoom, and they're really, getting a crash course in
Mm.
Tech 101 that was forced by this pandemic. And that only
Mm.
feeds into what we're doing.
Yes, amazing. So, well, we talked a little bit about tech. Let's go a little bit deeper into that. How you would set somebody up, what tools that you generally use, how you handle things like the time zone differences between, say, the east coast of the US and somewhere out in Asia. Just talk me through some of the ways you kind of start to integrate somebody who's remote into a business that's here in the US.
Yeah. So We always say that the number one thing that really matters when you're bringing in a remote team member into an existing business is context. Context, context, context is the most important thing above anything
Mm,
else. And it is true. If you're sitting next to someone in a physical office setting, you overhear things that help inform you as to how the business runs, how it generates revenue, what its growth potential is, what its challenges are, where the skeletons are buried. You get
mm-hmm,
all of that just by being in the same environment and overhearing things, right?
mm,
And you don't get that by default when you're working with a remote team member, which
mm,
means you need to foster a culture of building that in from the ground up. A great example is internally at the people company, we have 4 head office staff that then supervise all of our client facing VAs, the 25 or so the 25 or so team members that we have actually paired with a client.
mm,
But we run a default open company, which
mm-hmm,
means everything for those 4 people at the top, regardless of whether or not it affects their job responsibility, anyone can access.
mm-hmm,
And that allows them to see how the company runs even outside of their main job responsibility,
mm,
and helps inform them as to where we're going, where we're at, what our challenges are. But more importantly, allows them to get all of that kind of a peripheral vision that helps them make decisions outside of the scope of the standard operating procedure or
mm.
outside of the scope of their instructions. That way, they're not bothering me or they're not bothering their supervisor all the time. They have enough context as to what the goals of the business are and how the business runs in order to be able to make that judgment call. More
Oh,
tactically, when it comes to tools and software, we have a lot of exciting things that we help get our clients on because we're so white glove. We really adapt to whatever our clients are using. So I think we're trained on like 6 different phone systems at this point, just
mm-hmm,
because no one can agree on the same thing. But our standard stack, especially when we're helping move someone like a tradesman onto new software to help them collaborate. Phone systems, we love Quo. It is, I think, formerly known as Open Phone. And we love it because it uses a lot of these great AI features and uses it in
mm-hmm,
a very smart way where
mm-hmm,
all calls get automatically transcribed and summarized. You have the two-way integration into most popular CRMs, and it allows you to keep track of what was said and what the conversations previously were, which is just
mm-hmm,
fantastic. We
mm-hmm,
use a lot with the Google Workspace suite and their new Gemini products, which
mm-hmm,
allow you to integrate the generative AI across their entire suite. So,
mm-hmm,
a Gmail, it can draft, it can schedule, it can parse emails with all of the Drive functionality. It can now, which is so awesome, it can use the AI formula inside of a Google Sheet. So you just type equal AI, and then you can build in prompts into your sheets and then pull in data from other cells, which is super handy. So, we do our best to equip all of the virtual assistants that we place with a client with all of this very forward thinking, futuristic esque technology that helps them get better at their job so they can help their clients more.
That's amazing, Nathan. I mean, you jumped ahead of me there. You've actually mentioned three AI tools. It's going to be my next question about what AI tools. So those were great examples of how you've nicely blended the human element with the AI element. But I guess the next question is, do we see that, AI is going to replace jobs? I mean, that's one of the biggest fears that the workforce has at the moment is the replacement of jobs. Um, I guess if you're a worker in the US, you're concerned about your job going offshore. Now we're also concerned about our job not only going offshore, but going to AI. How do you
Yes,
see this unfolding in the next few years?
I think that a lot of the basic data entry work will probably rightfully lose its way to the newer and newer models as they get more complex and as they can handle those edge cases. We
Hmm.
see this a lot with turning unstructured data into structured data already.
Hmm.
And that has been one of the biggest use cases for AI in an enterprise or a business setting right now. And I actually think that that's a good thing just because that's really mind-numbing work anyway and has high turnover. It's quite soul-sucking. We try not to place a lot of it and we try to take really good care of people whose job responsibility it is just because it's so repetitive and it's so menial, but it needs to be done. So stuff like that, absolutely, I think the AI can take all of that. Where you really get into more of the sticky wicket is more of the generalist office manager work, right?
Hmm.
And I think an argument could be made that some of the job responsibilities will probably be able to be done entirely by artificial intelligence. What is more realistic, I think, is is a human being will still need to be in the loop, and
Hmm.
that's where the virtual assistant comes in.
Hmm.
And if we shift our focus from, at least in our case, how do we prevent our industry and our business from being entirely replaced to how do we train them on how an LLM works so they know how to use it intelligently and they know what its capabilities are?
Mm.
How do we train them on not just individual pieces of software, but how does the underlying technology work? That way it's kind of evergreen and they know how to approach the new version of whatever the software is in 6 months or the
Mm.
competitor, which all of a sudden leapfrogs over the other, right? How do we help implant those evergreen skills and how do we help our VAs think critically about artificial intelligence on a fundamental, almost like a theory level,
Mm.
rather than helping train them in specific pieces of software? Because as we've seen over the last 2 or 3 years, you know, this is the high performer here, and then 3 months later, someone comes along with a better model, and then you need to go learn an entirely new user interface, or a same thing happening with a lot of the very specific use case oriented pieces of software,
Mm.
where back when the ChatGPT models built into the ChatGPT UI weren't as good as some of the marketing generation, right? You saw one software after another that was tailor made for marketing use.
Mm.
And it was like every month and a half or every 2 months, you would get a new software with an even flashier demo and even better performance. And then you'd have to move, all of your context and everything to that new software because it was like the cutting edge thing. And it was like this almost, I mean, almost this race to the bottom.
Mm.
And I think that a lot more could be said about helping train and educate people about how AI works, how safety and security, which is a big thing that we train about internally, not putting client data just straight into ChatGPT,
Mm.
and the implications of how that data is used to then train further iterations of the model, all of that stuff that nobody really talks about, which will help equip them to use it in a way that actually helps benefit the client. That's a very long way of saying my gut feeling right now, having been in the industry, is we're not going to see a complete shift to where the role of the virtual assistant or the role of a BPO company, a business process outsourcing company, is negated entirely. Rather, I think if we do the legwork and we train them on how to use these tools and these models and this underlying technology in a responsible way,
Mm.
that's going to be the play going forward.
Right. So here I could think of a couple of examples to illustrate that. One might be if you wanted someone to design some a bit of graphical art, like a logo or something. Going back before AI, you would have to find somebody, perhaps through one of those tools, brief them, and then ask them to give you three or four, choices. And the better way you've created that context, the better way you get those three or four logos.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I can go to an LLM, give it a good prompt, and I can get those three logos auto-generated. So that's kind of one example where I think that traditional, I guess, scripted kind of role is going to be diminished by the power of AI. But then the flip side to that is something I think you're bringing in where you've added some value over and above and on top of if I'm understanding this correctly, over and above and on top of these freelancer and Upwork type tools, that actually brings almost an education component in to people who are unaware of how to leverage virtual assistants and AI and to streamline their business to be far more efficient and take the load off the business owner.
I think that that's a great way of putting it. Also, I don't know if you've seen this, but being on the younger side of things at my age, my compatriots, my colleagues that are not in the tech world,
Mm.
what I've seen is almost a contempt for AI. And I have noticed that there's a lot of conversation, there's a lot of discourse going around about, the AI's effect on the environment and on
Hmm.
water usage. I'm
Hmm.
not going to speak on how accurate that is. That's not my place. But there will always also be a market of people that, in the role of a business owner, have no interest in at this point engaging with the technology,
Hmm.
and they will need human support. But then the
Hmm.
flip side of it is, we have a VA placed with a massage therapist
Hmm.
right now,
Hmm.
and it's a part-time engagement. It's 20 hours a week, and that means that the phones are only covered for a 4 hours a day, right?
Hmm.
And they're open 10 hours a day, so they need some coverage on the other 6 hours that they're open, as well as after hours, right? And we originally placed them with Quo, and that's our a very forward thinking the phone system that we're a partner of.
Hmm.
And Quo has this built-in AI answering service, actually one of the best on the market that I've seen,
Hmm.
called Sona.
Hmm.
And even though it's the best on the market, even though it is incredibly lifelike, incredibly realistic, super low latency, I think we got 6 weeks into using it where, instead of them continuing to use it, they just shifted the part-time hire to full-time because, and I quote, "the people of Redmond are sick of AI," was the specific response. That so my um, the other side of it is, it could be that people are already missing the human touch. I know that's why a lot of people work with us, is because a live human being always answers the phone within 2 or 3 minutes, and you can get in touch with us very easily,
Mm,
and
mm,
that there's the human element there. And
mhm,
just anecdotally, it is funny to me that a lot of people are already getting kind of sick and tired of having to interact with these robots, and are already willing to pay a premium, more than double what they were paying before for a part-time hire, just
mm.
to avoid it.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
just with those like anecdotal stories, I think that our industry is safe for the time being. So our attention then turns to, well, then how do we empower our virtual assistants to do something good with the technology?
Right. So that's a good pivot point. Let's talk a little bit about how you guys use AI. And one of the challenges that I've had with especially my new hires and people that come perhaps just straight out of college, fairly early into the workforce, there is a tendency for them to take what I've said, a question, and go straight to the LLM, uh,
Hmm.
type in what they thought they heard, and then send it back to me as if
Yeah.
is this okay? And I can tell because I can tell that it's too refined.
Hmm.
It's too quick, and of course they can't really explain what it is they've delivered to me. And then I'll explain what I want again, and then I think they'll go straight back to the LLM and try again. And it's almost as though they're taking themselves out of the thinking part, and just
Yeah.
going straight to the LLM. I guess first question then is, are your virtual assistants using LLMs, and if so, how, and how are they using it in good ways?
Yeah. We see exactly what you've described a lot with our test tasks. And these are paid assignments that we do before we place a virtual assistant with a client. And that's one of the reasons why we do it,
Mm-hmm.
because it is getting significantly easier the more that we see it to be able to read what people call a chat GPT syntax, right? You're able to tell it's getting easier. The M dashes, the it's not X, it's Y with like the hyperbolus, a second example there. So it is getting easier and easier. And
Mm.
especially if English is your first language, and we're hiring from a talent pool where English is not their first language, it's usually their second language,
Mm.
we can usually tell when they can't.
Yeah.
So we then, have a bit of a dilemma. Is this as good as it's going to get? Or is there some, a breaking in that we can do with this person and, set expectations appropriately that, hey, our client is not hiring you to like run ChatGPT. Like,
Mm. Mm.
if they
Mm.
wanted to run their question through ChatGPT, they wouldn't be spending, a $15 an hour to hire you, right?
Mm. Mm.
They could just do it themselves.
Mm.
So we do heavily encourage that our VAs use LLMs. We're a big ChatGPT. That's the model of choice. A Claude and Grok are all fine choices. We just really like, a ChatGPT. A lot of people are very familiar. And what I really love about ChatGPT, it's technically meant for students, but we use it all the time. It's called study mode. I don't know if you've heard of this.
No, no, that's new to me.
So, yeah, this is fantastic. Where if you have study mode enabled and you ask it a question, it will not give you the answer. It will help you think through how to get to the answer.
Mm.
So we are all for using ChatGPT, but I'm hiring someone for their critical thinking skills, and I'm all for refining that.
Mm.
So it is one thing if you use study mode and you put the question in there, and then you communicate with the system in a way that helps you arrive at the question, because then there's some upskilling happening there, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then it turns into me investing in your growth as a team member with the hope that I retain you for a long time, and then learn more and more, and then your capacity for critical thinking and your intuition all get better over time. That's completely different from what you were describing, which is putting my question into an LLM and then basically just copying and pasting it right back out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I found that I guess a little frustrating when I see that happening, and this is a really neat tool to try and get around that. Um, And I think it also, what I'm trying to do, I think, is the same way as you, Nathan. It's to, yes, use the AI tools, but don't take yourself out of the thinking loop. What I'm trying to do is develop um, someone who has, as you say, context that grows over time. They know how to take the business forward. They're on the front foot. And we have a leadership tool that we use. It takes us through 4 phases of leadership, and I'm always trying to get them to stage 4, which is effectively they're running the project, and I'm just sort of um, at a distance, asking them what they need from me to help prod that forward. And I can't get them to that level if they are just relying on Chat GPT reports and me giving them feedback on ChatGPT's reports.
Right.
They're almost out of the loop. They'll never
Right.
get to the point that I need them at, which is to
Yeah.
drive projects and ultimately take some of my load off me so I can fully delegate. Delegate's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to delegate, push things to people so that I don't have to do them. Not because I'm lazy. It's just that I've got another one that I'm going to bring down, another project I'm going to bring down as soon as I can get that one off. And it's never ending.
I think a lot of people who are doing what you're describing are not thinking things through to the end,
Mm,
because sure, they probably can get away with that. And I'm sure, a lot of people can take the output, they can, remove the M dashers or whatever they've got to do to make it seem like they typed it out and, make it look like it's their work.
mm-hmm,
But I mean, if that's the end goal and if that's what they're doing, there are millions of people that are doing the same thing, right? That is a dime a dozen at this point. We get 250, 300 applications for a single role at this point here. And that's a lot of people. I quite literally mean, a dime a dozen in the sense of I have 250 people that can do exactly that. But
Yeah.
what's going to happen is that people who can think critically and who can absorb context and who put a little more effort in, they will become in lesser and lesser supply and higher demand.
Mm.
And, economically, they'll be able to charge significantly more competitive rates because just for doing what we consider the bare minimum, the rest of the workforce is not even going to be able to do that. And
Mm.
then, you know, I think over the long term, they'll find that it's a significant advantage.
So,
So that's, yeah,
so AI could effectively dumb down an element of the workforce who is not really engaged in solving the problems themselves, but relying,
yeah,
so much on AI. I mean, I just literally signed up for my guys to use a coding tool reluctantly a little bit, to be honest, even though, we're so pro AI at Skillion, of course, but I had to sit down with the guy and say, you have to know every single line of code,
yeah,
use the tool, but don't rely on it, because often we found ourselves getting into projects where we get stuck, 9/10 of the way through, customer wants it delivered, and we can't get it to work because there's so many things that are being done by AI. No one actually understands how it's being created. So very, very aligned with you there, Nathan. So back to the people side of things, is there some ways that you're able to gauge the performance of people remotely from a different country, different time zone, or a step away, you're not working directly with them? And I guess, does AI help you in any way to gauge the performance of uh, your 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 staff, your virtual
yeah.
assistants?
So we do have a lot of the performance management side very well built out, but it's actually all, I wouldn't say old school because it's all proprietary software that we've built from the ground up, but there's no AI in any of it, actually. So we do performance scorecards. We have an end of day check in. We do individual coaching sessions. We have that very methodically built out.
Right.
And our clients don't even see 90% of that because it's not their burden to bear. Their expectation is that they have someone that they can rely on that's on top of their game. They don't need to see any of what we do to help the virtual assistant be their best self, right?
Yeah.
But it does exist, and we've built a lot of software and a lot of technology to help support our office since we are only 4 people, right? So we have a lot of that standardized, and a lot of that is, very polished, but
Yep.
no AI in the performance management side of things
Right.
because at the end of the day we're dealing with human beings, and it is an art and a science, right?
Right. So perhaps you're talking about interviews with the client, interviews with the virtual assistant that can help you with the scorecard. Maybe there was some written guidelines from the client that you can say, well, how are we hitting those goals, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Cool. All right. So if there was some kind of AI tool that would help you with that. I'm very interested in, I guess, virtual workers, remote workers, time zone, leveraging that. Is there some kind of AI magic tool that you could reach out and say, that would really help me? Is there something that comes to mind for you?
So not on the performance management piece, but there is definitely on the efficiency piece.
Right.
So I am of the belief that we're dealing with the human beings, and this is their livelihood. It is in many cases their sole source of income. I feel like when we're judging their performance and when we're making decisions that may affect in their long-term prosperity and their long-term, economic health,
Hmm.
and I mean, if they stay with the company or not, or if the client is satisfied with them or not, those decisions should be made by human beings. A computer can never be held accountable. Therefore, a computer should never make a management decision, right?
Right.
Or in this case, a decision that can affect the livelihood of a real life human being.
Yeah.
But efficiency wise, absolutely. One of the things that I really wish existed, every single piece of software everyone uses right now has hotkeys, right?
Hmm.
These are are a specific combination of keys that you can hit on your keyboard in order to navigate between different workflows or to autofill information or to move between different panes. Every single software, it doesn't matter which one, has some sort of a keyboard based support. And what we see a lot right now is that our virtual assistants, or really anybody, I mean, even our clients, don't take the time to learn the hotkey for a specific action. Like we see
Mm,
this a lot on Google Chrome, right?
hmm
You can move tabs on Google Chrome by hitting Option Command and then your right or your left arrow, and your hands are already at your keyboard. So it
mm,
turns having to change the tab from like having to move your mouse, click on the tab, move it back to where you were. That takes, a 3/4 of a second. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it really adds up to
mm,
where if you just memorize the hotkey, it takes a tenth of a second, a 20th of a second.
mm,
And that compounded over, 70, 80 actions that have hotkeys adds up to very realistically 30, 40 minutes a day
mm,
of
mm.
you not having to go and click specific things. And I really wish that there was this AI powered tool that almost predicted what a user was going to do and reminded them that there was a hotkey for that. That way
Hmm.
they can get more efficient at navigating the software that they use on a daily basis.
Well, that's amazing, amazing idea. Maybe that's something we at Skillian should look into for you. You
It
can
would
be our
save
best
everyone a
customer.
lot of time.
Yeah, okay. So I guess we're coming back to sort of wrapping up now, and there's, the future of AI. I mean, where do you think the future of AI is going to take us, and particularly in your field that's cast forward, say, about 5 years? Where do you think we're going to be with AI?
I feel like you're asking the wrong person. I think one thing that we have started to use AI for that I think we'll be able to take to more of a natural conclusion is building a personalized experiences for people at
Hmm.
scale and
Hmm.
and specifically in a work context. I mean that we usually by default record everything. So all of our emails, all of our meetings, all of our phone calls all
Hmm.
feed into HubSpot.
Hmm.
And we have right now a workflow where if someone says a personal piece of information, like if offhand they mention, oh, I'm sorry, my late, I was dropping my son off at soccer practice,
Mm.
that gets isolated and gets added to a custom property that we use just to keep track of this like anecdotal almost a personal information about someone's life that
Mm.
we can then use to feel more connected and more personalized to them. So,
Mm.
like right now, I'm actually Christmas shopping for all of our clients, and we're using those little snippets of info that we've gotten through all of these conversations to help us influence
Mm.
what gifts we're going to get for people.
That's
And
amazing. Hmm.
it helps us a lot because we had a prospect um, 3 months ago offhandedly mentioned that he's allergic to meat,
Mm.
to chicken, right?
Mm.
And we do these lovely customer appreciation gifts through a Gold Belly, and I use that, and I was able to make sure that we got him a vegetarian, offer instead. So we
Amazing. Mm.
use stuff like that already, but I think that
Hmm.
there's a lot of room for opportunity there
Hmm.
where, there's just so much personal information about everyone we interact with that's just dropped in these little anecdotal 5 second interactions that you'll forget unless they're written down somewhere. And I
Right.
think in 5 years we'll be able to see that kind of get to its natural conclusion where every time we're on the phone together or every time you as a customer interact with me as a vendor, we're able to hyper personalize it, even though there's really no need to. It just makes you feel better about doing business with us. So
Yeah.
I'm really excited about those kinds of opportunities. I feel like the act of remembering someone really makes them feel good. And I think the AI can really be a great force for change there.
Wow, that's amazing. I think you've really touched on something very important, and that is that as people, we love connection, we crave connection, we need connection. And how about using AI to help with that? I think that's a really positive idea that comes out of AI. So, to summarize, Nathan, do you think AI is hype or help?
Help.
Yes?
Absolutely.
Good.
Help, help, help.
Well, that's been great. You've educated me and our audience enormously, Nathan. So thank you very much. And I wish you well with your business and take care.
It is my privilege. And thank you so much.
Well, that was a fascinating discussion I had with Nathan. We really learned a lot about how virtual assistants work and how AI is being integrated rather than replacing virtual assistants. We talked about how LLMs are being used by virtual assistants to help them perform better. And Nathan had some really interesting insights about how AI can actually help us with one very important human condition, and that is our need for connection. And I thought that was a really good insight, and how AI can actually be helpful and how it's going to drive us forward to do things and be a really useful tool. So if you want to know more about Skillium, please follow the links in the description. If you want to make a comment about this podcast, please do so. We always like reading comments from our audience and direct us into things that are interesting subjects. We're all about AI, AI hype or help. I hope you found that interesting, and thanks for watching.